Developing story this morning in the wake of Vladimir Putin's decision to initiate Russia's first military mobilization since World War II. G7 foreign ministers announcing that they will pursue more sanctions against Moscow following this order. Joining us right now is Michael O'Hanlon. He's a senior fellow at foreign policy at the Brookings Institution. And Michael, what we're hearing right now, the saber rattling, I've been a little surprised that the markets haven't reacted more to it. It was the Fed that sent the markets lower yesterday, not this news. But as somebody who watches this from a defense perspective, from a foreign policy perspective, how important are these latest moves from Putin?
Hi, Becky. Well, it certainly indicates that Putin's in no mood to concede momentum or defeat. Beyond that, maybe the markets are showing an understandable and smart calm, because this is probably as much rhetoric as anything. I mean, obviously, mobilization does mean something in physical terms, but I don't see a couple 100,000 Russian recruits or reservists who have not been training, who are not particularly well equipped, as making any fundamental difference in the war. But it does signal that Putin's not going to somehow, find a way to ease out of this conflict and concede much of the territory that he's gained in the last few months. And so we still have a path forward that's very uncertain. And in that sense, this war could go on for quite some time. And it could start to resemble in some ways World War I, where every winter people go back to the drawing board, build more artillery shells and get ready for a spring offensive. So in that sense, maybe the market should be a little more worried than they are. But I don't see this as a dramatic escalation, despite the nuclear threats. Putin sort of, constructed this myth of a NATO threat to his own territory to justify the nuclear threat. So maybe he was not really being fully serious or literal. He was just trying to remind us that if this goes on forever, there's no telling what comes next.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger question. Are we on the edge of a nuclear war, or is he speaking hypothetically, speaking metaphorically?
We're not on the edge of it, I don't think, but it's also not something we should entirely dismiss. And I think, the West is doing well to support Ukraine, but we're also going to have to get creative and thoughtful about what kind of peace could possibly emerge from this, so we don't get sort of a World War I-like peace where it's really just a pause before the next conflict and possibly a worse conflict. I was in Poland and Ukraine last week and saw the NATO supply lines and the amazing logistical effort that the alliance is using now to get supplies into Ukraine. And Putin could decide to attack that supply link, that he could decide to take a risk against NATO territory. It would be stupid at one level, of course, because NATO would retaliate. But maybe Putin's whole point would not be so much to try to win the war against NATO, but just to shock us to the point where we're willing to have some kind of a big international peace conference that he can use to get at least some concessions or compromise, and then justify the war and claim partial success in that way. Those kinds of possibilities have to be allowed for, because, again, he's not in a mood to concede right now.
I've seen some clips, video clips this morning of families saying goodbye to people who have been drafted in small Russian towns. How much support does he have inside Russia at this point?
Well, it's fascinating, Becky. There are 20 to 25,000 Russian troops killed in action so far in this war. So 20,000 Russian moms who have lost a kid. And that's going to translate, even in a repressive quasi-dictatorship like Putin's Russia, that's going to translate into political unrest at some juncture. And so I think it does have to be taken seriously, even though Putin still has most of the Russians behind him, and his poll numbers are still not bad, pretty good by Western standards. At some point, he's going to have to worry, and he probably is worried. I'm not sure that means that he's going to back down, because if you read his essay from last summer that's still available online, he justifies this war in these incredibly sweeping historical terms about Ukraine's proper place in Europe and sort of Russia's century or millennium-long struggle against the West for influence. So he almost translates this into a crusade. And I do think he's going to keep at it. But he's got to keep an eye on his domestic support, which is indeed eroding.